Hello guys, happy new year. I'm sorry if I didn't do some video these past weeks. I was busy at work. Today we're gonna do a challenge, right? This is a challenge, a DevOps challenge. As you guys can see, it says that for this project, please think about how you will architect a scalable and secure web application in AWS. Then we have some requirement, right? Uh, One of them is that we need to have a Bastion host. That means all other instances or EC2 instances will be private. We also want to have a MySQL database with a replica in a different easy, and we also want a backup of that database to on a different region, right? It is in a different region. And they give us the URL of the application. And for the database, as we said earlier, is to have they need to have a backup and maintenance settings. It needs to have performance insights, and it needs to have some encryption and multi availability zone. So with this, as I am not a cloud engineer, or I'm not like I don't have any certification into a cloud. I learn it on my own. So I came up with this. So this is what I was able to do, and this is the PDF version of it. So what I did is that we're gonna have a route 53. Then we're gonna have in the first region. This is where we're gonna put all our infrastructure, and in that region, we're going to create a VPC, a internet gateway, and we're going to have some routes. So we're going to do route tables, and we're going to have three public subnets. The first one going to be for the Bastion host, so that we can SSH to private instances. And the second one going to be for the load balancer. And the third one going to be for the NAT gateway. Then we're going to have three private subnets. The first one going to be for our application, and the next one going to be for our master database. Then the master database is going to be have two private subnet, by the way. Then we're going to have also a replica, and the replica, as you guys can see, we have some encryption as well as the master database. Then we're going to create a backup of the master database in another region where we're going to encrypt it, and we're going to have the database in one of the availability zone in that region. So basically that is what we're going to do. So let's start. So the first thing I'm going to do is that I'm going to log in to my AWS console, right? Then I'm going to go to IAM, or I can search for IAM, right? I'm going to click on IAM. Then I'm going to go to user, and I'm going to create a new user. I'm going to call my user 3-tier, for example, right? And we don't need to have a console access, so we are not going to check this one. So we're going to go to next, and I'm going to give him administrator access. I'm going to take the permission from here. I can click over here, or you can come over here and do attach different policy, and you select administrator access. I'm going to go to next. Then I'm going to click on create user. Then when the user is created, I'm going to click on the user and I'm going to go to security credentials and I'm going to look for access key. And I'm going to create the access key, right? It's going to be for the command line interface. I'm going to confirm it and I'm going to go to next. And I'm going to click on create access key. This is my access key and my secret access key. You can download it, but since this is just for this project, after this project, I'm going to delete it. So next thing I'm going to do is that I'm going to go to my console. So I open a terminal, right, on my computer. The requirement is that make sure that you have a AWS CLI and you have your Terraform installed, right? And for me to check it, I can do Terraform hyphen version. I'm going to see that I do have this latest version and I may need to update it, right? So I do have Terraform and I also have AWS CLI installed. So now I'm going to clear this and I'm going to do AWS configure, right? I'm going to press enter and I'm going to copy. It's going to ask for the access key ID. I'm going to copy this and paste it, right? Press enter and it's going to ask me for the secret access key. I'm going to copy this part and paste it right here. And the default region going to stay US East 2, right? And everything else going to stay the same. So this is how I'm going to connect my computer to my AWS. So the next thing is to start building our project. So the first thing we're going to do is to go back to the AWS console. I'm going to make it bigger. Then I'm going to go to services. Then I'm going to look for S3 bucket. I do have one S3 bucket, but I'm going to create another one in the same region, and I'm going to call it, let's call it 3-tier Able. And you can do whatever you want with it, but for us this is fine. You don't need to do anything else. So I'm going to click on create bucket. Our bucket is created. So the next thing is that I'm going to open my Visual Studio Code and I'm going to create a directory where I'm going to put all my Terraform configuration files. So I just open my Visual Studio Code. I'm going to go to File, New Open Folder, and over here I'm going to create a new folder that I'm going to call 3-tier, and I'm going to open it. So right now we don't have anything. I'm going to open the terminal as well. So the first thing I'm going to do is to create the, oh, sorry, let me remove this, is to create the, as you guys can see over here, is to create what? Is to have our providers. So I'm going to come over here. I'm going to create a file called providers.tf, right? And I'm going to do the search AWS Provider Terraform. And I'm just going to copy this. And I'm going to paste it right here. And I'm going to change the region because I said my region as a provider is going to be US East 2, right? And I'm going to save this. The next thing is that I need to have my S3 bucket as a backup, right? So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to create a, a new file, and I'm going to call it backup or backend that tf, right? It's going to be my backend. My S3 bucket going to be my backend. Sorry. So I'm going to remove provider, and I'm going to put S3 backend. And I'm going to look for this one, and I'm just going to copy it, right? I'll just click on copy, and I'm going to paste it right here. So my bucket will be 3-tier able, and the path we're going to do backend slash, let's use the, as key, we're going to use Terraform. I think it's Terraform that tf state. That is the Terraform state file. So it's going to be backend slash Terraform that tf state. And the region going to be US is 2. And I'm going to save this, right? So now I'm going to run my first Terraform apply, right? And let's go over here, and let's stay on S3, and let's do Terraform first, validate to make sure that everything looks good. So we need to run Terraform init, sorry. As you guys can see, is initializing the backend. So everything looks good. Now we can do Terraform validate. Everything looks good. You can also do Terraform format, right? So everything looks good. And I'm going to do, you can do Terraform plan if you want, but I know what I want to do. So I'm going to do Terraform apply auto approve. Nothing has been created, but everything is working fine, right? And for me to check it, I can come over here and I go to my S3 bucket, and I'm going to see that I have something called backend, like right here. And if I go inside, I'm going to see a Terraform state file. So now we are in business. According to this diagram, since we already selected our region, so the first thing we need to do is to create our VPC. That is what we're going to do. I'm going to come over here. I'm going to go to services. I'm going to go to VPC. I'm going to go to my VPCs, and you guys going to see that we only have the default VPC, and make sure that we are in the right region, US East 2. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to I'm going to create a new Terraform file, right? I'm going to call it vpc.tf. And I'm going to come over here back, and I'm going to remove S3 backend, and I'm going to put AWS VPC. And I'm going to take the resource because we are creating resources. We are not using module right here. I'm going to take this is the basics one, but I'm going to take the basics one with tag, and I'm going to paste it right here. So right here, I'm going to change this one. I don't want to use this cedar block. I'm going to use 192.168. I can do it this way, or I can add variable, and I'm going to do it using variable. So I'm going to remove this, the cd block, and I'm going to put var that VPC. And the tenancy, we're going to leave it as default. And let's tag it by using Terraform -VPC. Let's save this one. Now is you guys going to see that we have some issue right here, as you guys can see. So I'm going to create a new file called variable, that tf, right? Where I'm going to define my variable. I'm going to do variable, and I call this variable VPC. So the first variable going to be VPC. I open my curly brackets, and I'm going to do some description. This is Terraform VPC. After, I'm going to put the type. The type is string. We can put the default right here, but I don't want to put the default one. I'm going to use another file. So I'm going to save this one, and I'm going to use another file that I'm going to call Terraform dot tf vars. So over here is looking for a default. I'm going to add a default to this file. So I'm just going to do my VPC, and I'm going to put my CEDAR right here. My CEDAR going to be 192.168.0.0/16. So this is what I'm going to use. And we know that this part is the network. And if we add one over here, it's going to be the routing. If we add two over here, it's going to be the DNS. And if we add three over here, is for AWS future use. And if we add over here 255, and please remove this. 255 is for broadcasting. Those are the 4 IP addresses that we cannot use in our VPC. So, with that said, let's go back and check. We have the type looks good, and the VPC looks good. Let me bring it one more step like this. Let's save everything, and let's do Terraform. Validate, just to make sure that everything looks good. Everything looks good. So we're going to do Terraform, apply, and let's see if you're going to have our VPC created. Right now, we don't have anything. So the plan is to add one thing, and it looks like it's just created the VPC. Let's refresh it, and we have our VPC wire. We have the VPC ID. We have our CEDAR wire, CEDAR block. And it's not the default VPC. That's good. So now we have our VPC. So the next thing we're going to do is to create some subnet and some internet gateway. So let's do some cleanup. We don't need the backend anymore. We don't need the provider for now. And we don't need the VPC for now. We only need the variable Terraform.tf var, and whatever we're going to create next. So if I come over here, I'm going to see that after creating my VPC, what I can create next is an internet gateway. So I'm going to come to Terraform documentation, and I'm going to do AWS internet gateway, and I look for a resource, and I'm going to copy this, and I'm going to create a new file called igw.tf for internet gateway, and I'm going to paste this one wire. What I'm going to do is that, as you guys can see, we don't need to do a big thing. We're just going to call this one Terraform AGW, and you guys can see we're going to attach. This is where we attach our internet gateway to our VPC. Our VPC resource is AWS VPC.main. So, and it is already wired, and we just add RD. So we don't need to do anything. And the next thing is just to run Terraform apply hyphen space hyphen auto approve and see if we have our VPC. Sorry, our internet gateway created and attached to our VPC. Let's go to internet gateways, and we have our internet gateway with tags Terraform IGW, sorry. And if we see the state says attached, and it is attached to our Terraform VPC. So we all good. The next thing is to add some subnet, right? So the first thing I'm going to do is to come back right here and remove internet gateway and put subnet. We have subnet right here, right? So the diagram says we're going to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 subnets. So let's start creating those subnets, right? I'm going to copy this, and I'm going to create a new Terraform file called subnet plural.tf. We're going to put all the subnet right here. I'm going to paste this one. I'm going to change this one. The first subnet is going to be the Bastion host, for the Bastion host, right? And that subnet is going to be attached to our VPC. And we're going to change the seeder, right? For the subnet, it's going to be 192. Let's put this one as variable. Let's put it as variable. Let's put VPC var that VPC underscore seeder is going to be subnet, sorry. Subnet underscore seeder or subnet IP. Let's call it subnet IP. And for is we're going to force, because the availability is going to be done by AWS, but over here we want to force it a little bit, right? So I'm going to put if you see over here, we can add availability zones. So I'm going to put it availability underscore zone equal, and we're going to put it as a variable, right? Let's put some space. It's going to be that. Easy. And the first one, I'm going to put the first one for the first subnet, right? And the bastion going to be in public, right? We want it to be in public. And if I look over here, I'm going to see how to do that, right? It's going to be, I'm going to use this one. I'm going to copy it, and I'm going to paste it right here. I'm going to put true because it says so, right? It's by default it's false, so it should be true. I'm going to save it. Now I'm going to come to variable, and I'm going to create two more variables. I'm just going to copy this and paste it right here, and paste it right here. The first variable going to be the subnet IP underscore IP, right? And it's going to be a list. Let's put any, right? And the description going to be, this is subnet, Terraform subnet. Sorry. It's going to be a list, right? And we're going to put that list later. And the next one going to be the easy. We call it easy, right? Availability zone. Let's call it easy. And we're going to do, this is Terraform easies, right? And let's put it as a list as well. Let's put any so that it can be wide, right? And we're going to come to over here. The first thing was subnet underscore IP. And we said it was a list, right? So let's put our list. The first one going to be 192.168.1.0/24. I'm going to copy this. We have 6 subnets. So we're going to do it 6 times. I'm going to do 2 wire, comma. I'm going to change the third digit and put 3. And so on up to 6, right? Let's keep doing that. 4, 5, comma, and 6. Let's save it and come back. And the next one was the availability zones. We know that easy is a list as well, right? And we also know that we have 3, unless it has changed. It's going to be US-east hyphen 2A. Then I'm going to copy this. Then I'm going to put some space. I'm going to do and paste it. It's going to be US East B. Then I'm going to paste it and put US East C. Let's just use 3 of them, right? So we have our variable, 2 variable. We have our the first subnet, and the tag going to be Bastion subnet. So let's validate it. CDA block subnet IP. On the, we have an issue with a resource subnet Bastion subnet IP. Oh, okay. Oh, sorry, it's a list, so we need to define which one we use, and it's going to be 1, right? The way the availability zone is. Thank you, Terraform, for checking it for me. Let's run it. Everything looks good. Let's apply it, right? Terraform apply auto approved. And let's go to subnet. You guys see that we don't have a subnet yet. It's getting created. And let's wait a little bit. And if I refresh it, you guys going to see that we have a new subnet named Bastion subnet that is attached to our Terraform VPC, and the seeder going to be this one, the first one, the seeder block. So we have 254, 51, sorry, IP addresses, and it is in US is 2A as we want, right? So everything looks good. So now we're going to create the next one, and I'm going to do pretty much the same thing. And I'm going to pause the video and come back when I'm done with all other subnets. So what I did is that after created this one, I created 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 more subnets, right? So the second subnet was the load balancer that is created right here. And we have the NAT, we have the application. I made sure that the load balancer subnet and the web application subnet should be in the same availability zone. As you guys can see over here, same availability zones. And we have our first database subnet, and we have our second database subnet, right? And as you guys can see, starting at the web application, there's no more public IP address. So all of them going to be private. We see false, false. But they're not going to be public. That is why we see true over here. And the load balancer should be public, right? So let's just verify it by running Terraform validate. Everything looks good. Let's run. As you guys can see over here, we only have Bastion subnet, and let's run it. Terraform apply auto approved. So it's going to create 5 new resources. Let's give it like few seconds. Usually the subnet are way faster. They are done. If I refresh here, you're going to see that we have the database 1, the database 2, the load balancer, the NAT, and the app subnet. So the next thing we're going to do is to create an elastic IP address, right? So to do that, I'm just going to create a new file that I'm going to call elastic IP address EIP.tf, and I'm going to come over here. I'm going to remove subnet, and I'm going to put EIP Terraform. I'm going to look for resources, and I'm going to copy this and paste it right? Let's call it EIP again, right? And it's not going to be for an instance, so I'm going to comment this out. It's going to be for a domain, right? And the domain going to be VPC, right? And I'm going to tag, let's tag it, curly bracket, and I'm going to put name. Don't forget name start with uppercase N. So I'm going to name it Terraform EIP, right? And I can just validate it to make sure that everything looks good. And I can approve it, right? And let's go to elastic IP address, Right now, we don't have anything, but if you refresh, we're going to see that we have one right now. So the next thing we're going to do is to create some resources, right? We're going to create the NAT gateway, and we're going to create some route tables. We're going to create a route table association, and we're also going to create some security group. So let's go. What we're going to do next is to create the one that is very easy to do is to create the NAT gateway. Since we already have the elastic IP address, because the NAT going to use that elastic IP address, so we can go ahead and create the NAT gateway. So I'm going to remove this and I'm going to put NAT, and I'm going to copy this and I'm going to create a new file called nat.tf, right? And I'm going to do resource is going to be the AWS NAT gateway. I'm going to leave it as an example, or let's call it NAT. And we're going to allocate the IP, right? The elastic IP. We call it AWS EIP. So that is what I'm going to put wire. So it's going to be, instead of example, it's going to be EIP. And the subnet for our NAT, we're going to go to subnets and look for the subnet for our NAT, right? The subnet name is NAT. So we're going to come back and we're going to remove the example and put NAT, right? So let's call this one Terraform NAT. It's going to be as tag, right? And we want it to depend on the internet gateway. What is our internet gateway? It's going to be this, what happened GW, right? So we're going to come over here and we're going to put the resource name. It's going to be GW. GW is coming from wire, the name of the resource. This is the resource we want to create, and this is the provider. And this is the name of the resource. So we have it set for the NAT. Let's see if everything looks good. Let's validate it. Everything looks good. Let's apply it. But before applying, I just want to show you guys that as now, we don't have a NAT. So let's press Terraform apply --auto approved. And it is creating one resource. The NAT is pretty much very fast. It's going to take a few seconds. And if I refresh, you guys going to see that we have a Terraform -NAT creating, and it's going to be public. The connectivity going to be public, and the state is pending. So I'm going to pause the video and come back when everything is created. So it is done creating the NAT gateway. It is available now. And if you check over here and you go to our elastic IP address, you're going to see that it is the same thing. So now that we are done with the NAT gateway, let's create some route tables, right? We have 3 main route tables. But what we're going to do, we also have this route that we need to create it, right? So we're going to have 2 route tables. The first one going to be the public one, and the second going to be the private one. And all the public instance going to go through the public route table because they're going to have access to internet gateway directly. But and all the private or mainly the web application, will go through the NAT gateway route table or the private route table. To access internet, a private instance should go through the NAT gateway. So let's start doing that. So I'm going to go back to this and I'm going to come back and I'm going to remove the NAT and I'm going to put route table. By the way, this is how we handle routing on AWS. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to see what we have. I'm going to create a new file and I'm going to call it route underscore tables.tf. And I'm going to copy this and paste it. I'm going to add a comment in the first line and I'm going to call it public route. It's going to be AWS hyphen and I'm going to remove example and I'm going to put public. We're going to name it public. We're going to name the resource public, right? And the VPC going to be the AWS underscore VPC. It's going to be main, I think. Our VPC is main. So let's go back to our route table and let's put the CDA block. And I don't like to hard code them like this. So I'm going to put var that and we're going to call it internet to say we want to go to internet, right? And the gateway, we're going to as a route, this is a route. When we want to go to internet, we're going to go through the internet gateway. This is how we call our internet gateway, yes. And we can put IP route 6, but I'm not going to put it. IP6 route, sorry, IPv6 routes, but we are not going to put it, right? And I'm going to tag this one as public route hyphen Terraform, right? And what we need to add as variable going to be internet, right? So I'm going to come over here. I'm going to copy this. I'm going to go one step down and I'm going to paste it and I'm going to call this one internet. Sorry. And it's going to say this is Terraform internet route. And it's not going to be a list, right? Let's put any just to show you that you can put anything you want. Save it. And we're going to come over here and we're going to put internet. And for the internet, it's going to be the internet when we want to go to internet, right? And this is how AWS handle internet. So we have it like this. Let's come back to the route. Everything else should stay the same. Let's run Terraform validate. And let's run Terraform apply. But before that, if we come over here, you're going to see that we don't have a route named public route Terraform, right? But if we refresh it, we're going to have a new route. And if you go, you're going to see that when you want to go to internet, you're going to go through the internet gateway. But when we come over here, we don't have any subnet associate, right? So we need to handle subnet association. But before we do that, I'm going to copy this. I'm going to copy all. And I'm going to paste it a little bit down. And I'm going to remove public and put private route. And I'm going to put private over here as well. So it's going to stay the same And this time, the CW gonna stay the same, but we're gonna do something, right? If we come over here and we look for, we want it to go through the gateway, right? So it's gonna be not gateway ID. So let's remove this, and we're gonna put not underscore gateway underscore ID should be our AWS underscore not underscore gateway that I think we call it not, and we're gonna put the ID. How did we call our, yeah, we call it not. So we said that if you want to go to internet, the destination going to be the internet, you have to go through the NAT gateway. And we're going to change this one to put private. And I'm pretty sure everything looks good, so I can apply it directly. And let's see over here. And if we refresh, you're going to see that we have a private route. If I go into the private route, I'm going to see that if we want to go to internet, we have to go through the NAT that we created earlier. But we don't have any subnet associated to this. So the next thing we need to do is to add some subnet into our routes, public and private. So we're going to do route table association. So let's come back over here and go to route table, and we put association over here, right? And let me create a new file. We're going to call it route underscore table underscore association. Let's call it association dot tf. Let's call it, it's too long. Let's call it route. Let's cut route and put RTE. It's going to be route table association, right? And I'm going to copy this, the first one, and I'm going to paste it right here. So I'm going to call it, this one, I'm going to call it, let's call it Bastion, right? We want to associate the Bastion one. The Bastion going to be public, right? So the subnet ID is going to be the Bastion one, I think. The Bastion subnet, right? It's going to be the Bastion subnet. Yes. So basically what we are doing is that with our route, we're adding a subnet we associate right here. We're going to put a subnet that this route going to apply to this subnet, right? So we're going to add this subnet, and the route table going to be public, right? We're going to have public. So we're going to remove bar, and we're going to put public, right? And I'm going to copy this again. I'm going to do it 6 times, 3 times for the public one. The only thing that's going to change is going to be the name of the subnet and the name of the route, right? So I'm going to pause the video and come back when I'm done with public one. So I added 2 more routes. The first one was the Bastion, as we did. The second one going to be for the NAT one, right? We're going to change the name over here. So this NAT route going to be, this NAT subnet going to be associated to this route table, right? And we also add the load balancer. All of them are public, right? So it's going to be the subnet ID, right? So let's save it and let's apply it. I'm pretty sure that is fine, so I'm going to apply them, right? And as you can see over here, We don't have any association, but let's run it and see what's going to happen. Let's refresh it, right? If I refresh it, we're going to see that this is, sorry, I'm on the private, not, I'm going to go to the public one. And if I go to subnet association, I'm going to see that I have all my public subnet. And this is how we make a subnet public, right? Because any instance over here can go to the internet directly. They don't need the NAT gateway, right? So this is how I associate it. We're going to do the same thing with the private route. I'm just going to copy this and I'm going to put over here, I'm going to put private route, right? And it's going to be for the web application, right? And I'm going to do, it's going to be the subnet for the web application was, the name was web, right? So I'm going to put web over here as well. You can put whatever you want over here. I just want to make sure that they are like uniform. And I'm going to put web over here because it's the name. And the route going to be private, right? By the way, this name comes from right here, the route table, this one, route table. So this is how we're going to we're going to create a private route and tell the route to go to the private route association, right? And tell it to go to this route and put this subnet to this, associate this subnet to this route or this route table. So I'm going to pause the video and do the same thing with the database route tables, right? So I just finished with the private ones for the web application and the databases. So I save them and I'm gonna do some approve, right? But if I go to route tables and I go to private one, you're gonna see that we don't have any associations. And what we want is to have the web application database and database replica subnet over here, right? Let's run it and see. And let's refresh it. So if we go to subnet, we're going to see that in order for this subnet to have access to internet, they have to go through the NAT gateway. I just catch up a mistake I made. I had the same subnet ID for both, so I had to change it so that we can have those three subnets right here. And this is how we do route table association. So the next thing is that if you come to our diagram, we need to create some security group, right, for each of them, right? But this one, we're going to create those security group a little bit differently, right? But we're going to focus on this, and this, right? So let's create a new file that I'm going to call sg.tf for security group, right? I'm going to come over here and I'm going to remove route table association. I'm going to put security group. I'm going to look for resource. If you go with module, you're going to be lost. Module are faster, easier, but this is the faster and the easiest way and the good way to learn by doing it yourself. Okay, we're going to copy this. And the first resource group going to be security group, sorry, going to be the Bastion security group, right? Let's paste this one right here. It's going to be the resource we want to create, the provider, and the name of the resource. We're going to call it Bastion, right? And the name going to be Bastion. Bastion SG for security group, right? And it's going to be the Bastion called allow. It's going to allow only SSH, right? It's going to be, you can describe it the way you want, but this is how I'm going to do it. And my VPC for my security group, because security group are stateful, right? So we need to define the VPC. So we're going to put our VPC right here, and we're gonna start with ingress, right? As I said, you can put some description. We got us only gonna put like the ingress is only for SSH, allowing SSH from management IP addresses, right? So instead of putting hard coding, I'm going to remove this. I'm going to put var /ssh. That is how I'm going to call those port var.ssh. Only one port. We don't want to allow more than that. And we don't. We put this. We can put this as well. But what I like to do is that I like to put the protocol going to be the TCP, and the seeder I'm going to put is going to be the var that internet, because we already defined the internet right here. If you come right here, you're going to see that to go to internet, you're going to use this. So we don't need, let me delete whatever we don't need anymore. So it's going to be SSH. And oh, I was stuck. So I went faster. This is where I should be, right? This is where I should be. And the seeder block, we're just going to copy this, and we're going to put it right here. So ingress is going to be coming from anywhere, right? And the egress also going to be from anywhere. Let's put it that way, var.ssh, var.ssh. It's not going to go anywhere. It's just going to go to, let's say, to the web application only, or you can also go to let's say anything. That's fine. So we're going to have TCP, and it's going to be var internet, right? And we can add a description, but it's not really important, right? So over here, I'm going to name it Bastion security group, right? Let's save it and let's see if it's good. We have some issue with, we didn't define SSH. Let's define the SSH right here. So it's going to be SSH. We're going to call it any save, and the SSH port going to be the port going to be 22. So let's run it again. Let's see if it's going to be validated again, and it's good. So we can run Terraform apply, and if you come over here, you're going to see that we don't have a security group yet, the Bastion security group. But if I refresh this, you're going to see that we have the Bastion security group. And we're going to do the same thing with pretty much the same thing with the load balancer, right? But the load balancer, we only going to allow HTTPS and HTTP traffic, right, coming in, and it's going to go only to the web application. So I'm going to pause the video, do all that, and come and talk about it. So I just added the load balancer, right? And the main thing is that the load balancer can only allow HTTP and HTTPS traffic, right? As an ingress, it's going to be port 443 and port 80, right? And if you see over here, we have it as a list. It's going to be HTTP, right? Variable, right? And I add the HTTP variable right here. And if you want to see the list, it's going to be port 80 and port 443. And as output, it only going to talk the load balancer. We only going to talk to our web application, and we are telling that wire. And if you come over here, you're going to see that the web port is going to be load balancer that I said Jenkins. I should say web connection, right? And if we come over here, we're going to see that the web port is 80. So the load balancer can talk with our web application through port 80. And if you go back to the web application, is a little bit different, right? We want the load, since it's the private instance, we want to restrict the who can talk to the web application, right? So over here as an ingress, the first ingress, we are saying that only the Bastion host of every instance in this security group can talk to our web application through SSH, right? And also we're saying that the load balancer can talk to our web application only through the port 80, right? And this is how we say that, right? And our application can talk to anybody. And this is where we put all. And if you come over here, you see variable all is the SSH, and you're going to see that it is 0, right? We can talk to anybody. So this is how we add. And for the database security group, we do the same thing, right? We can SSH through the Bastion host, and only the web application can talk to our database. And also, I can also show you that I can add this, right? You can see the pod right here, and the database can talk to anybody, right? So, as you guys can see, the database can also listen to port 3306, right? And we can remove the web port, but let's leave it like that in case let's leave it like that. I don't think we're gonna need it. Yes, let's leave it like that. Let's leave it like that. Web port 80. I'm not sure, but let's leave it like that. Because sometimes I don't know if I'm going to use RDS or I'm going to use the EC2 instance to as my database yet. So I'm going to leave it in case I use the EC2 instance. But if you use RDB, you don't need it. So let's go ahead and validate it. And let's apply it. We already have the database, the web application, the Bastion, and the load balancer. So we have all our security group. So the next thing we're going to do is to create a keypair for our EC2 instances. So let's go ahead and open a new file, and we're going to call it, let's call it keypair.tf. And if we come over here and we go to Terraform AWS keypair, let's see what we have. We have this keypair as resource, right? But this is just a keypair. We need to create uh, the private key, right? So I'm going to copy something that I did already, and I'm going to paste it right here and explain it, right? So I'm going to create a TLS private key, right? Then I'm going to use that private key to have my key pair. Now, I want to have my key pair locally, right? So I'm going to go ahead and use the local provider, right? And I'm going to use a file I'm going to call it ssh-key, right? And this is going to be the file name, and this is going to be the content, right? So let's save it and let's validate it, right? Oh, okay. Since I'm using a new provider, I need to run Terraform init. And if you see, it's installing a new provider local, right? So let's go ahead and apply our Terraform. If you come over here and go to EC2 and go to key, you're going to see that we have the new key, right? We have a brand new key called Anael3, and that is the name of our key. And if you come over here, you're going to see that we have a key. We have it locally as well because we use this part. So this part is to create the key, and this part is to have the key locally, right? So the next thing I'm going to do is we're going to start creating the EC2 Bastion host, the web application EC2, and we're also going to create databases, right? We're going to create a database and all that. So let's go ahead and create the Bastion EC2 and the web EC2 because the database is going to take a little bit of time. So let's go ahead and create the Bastion host EC2. And if you see over here, we don't have anything, right? So I'm going to come over here. I'm going to put instance. And this is when we call the data source, but we don't want a data source. We want to create our instance. So I'm looking. Let's copy this one. And we're going to change it. Let's copy this one and we're going to change it a little bit. So I'm going to come over here. I'm going to call Bastion underscore ec2.tf, and I'm going to paste it here. So the first thing I'm going to do is that I'm going to change the name to Bastion, and the AMI, sorry, I don't want it from here. So I'm going to put var.ami, and the instance type, I also will use two instance type because the Bastion is just there. If you don't need to to have like a powerful instance, right? But the web should be powerful. So I'm going to create a list of instance type. So it's going to be var that instance underscore type. You can name it whatever, but the first going to be for my instance, for my uh, Bastion host, right? The less powerful instance type. And we have to, let's remove this and let's change it a little bit. Let's put some subnet ID, right? The subnet ID going to be AWS underscore subnet, and the subnet was the Bastion. So we want our EC2 instance to be in the subnet called Bastion, right? And we want to use the key we just created, right, for this instance. So we're going to do key underscore name. It's going to be AWS hyphen key hyphen pair, right? It's going to be that, and our key was NIL. So you're gonna call it NIL that key hyphen name, and the key name was AWS hyphen key hyphen pair that NIL that key name going to be NIL 3. We are good. And you don't have to put it, but I just want to put it to make sure that you understand that you can put also you can force a EC2 instance to have a public IP address, right? But you don't have to do it because we already did it in our subnet, but I'm going to put it anyway. Associate underscore public underscore IP underscore address, right? And it's going to be true, right? And we want to attach some security group to our uh, EC2 instance, right? We're going to do VPC underscore security underscore group underscore IDs, right? So it's going to be a list. It's looking for a list, right? So you're going to put code, and you can put like the name of the security group, right? Directly, the name of security group ID directly, or you can put like this, and you're going to do $ code AWS hyphen security hyphen group that. What is the name of the security group for the Bastion host? It's going to be Bastion, right? It's going to be Bastion hyphen ID, right? And we want our EC2 instance to have a tag, right? So we're going to add a tag, curly brackets, and name. So it should be uppercase N. And we're going to call it Bastion hyphen EC2. This is how we're going to create it. So we need to add two more things. We need to add the AMI and the instance as variable, right? So I'm going to come over here. I'm going to put variable. I say AMI. I'm going to do code, right? I can just copy this and paste it right here. And paste it right here, right? I'm going to call it AMI, right? And we're going to use Santo S7, right? We're going to see AMI using Santo S7, right? And the other thing was I'm going to copy this, or I'm just going to paste this one. I'm going to do variable instance underscore type. That is how we call it, right? And I'm going to open the curly bracket and I'm going to close them. I'm going to align this one. But over here, it's not any anymore. We're going to put a list, right? I'm going to put any. You can do it this way. That is how I like to do it, right? So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to add two more. It's going to be AMI equal, and it's going to be instance type equal, right? And this should be a list, right? So I said we want to use a CentOS 7, right? How do we do that? We're going to go to launch, and I'm going to look for AMI of CentOS 7. I'm going to go to wire. I'm going to look for CentOS 7, right? Okay. I'm going to click wire, and you got to have to subscribe and do all that. So this is how you're going to take your AMI, but I already have mine. I don't have to do the subscription again. So I'm just going to copy it right here, my AMI code. I have to put double code, right? And the instance type, let's select this one. For the instance type, I say we're going to have two. For the as the instance type, we're going to have T2 micro, right? For the Bastion, because we don't need a powerful Bastion. And for the web application, let's use T2. Let's use the one. T2 is going to be T2 dot 2x large. Right. Let's cross fingers. That is the right one. So let's come back over here, and we see we don't have anything running. So let's check to see if it's going to be validated, or I press edit, but let's validate it to make sure that there's no error, right? And let's apply it. Terraform apply. So now we are creating the Bastion host. I'm going to pause the video and come back when it's done creating. So it is done creating the EC2 instance. Let's refresh it. And let's just make sure, I'm going to make this one bigger. Let's just make sure that everything looks good. It looks good. And we have a public IP address, and the security group is fine, right? We have the proper key, and let's check, right? Let's check to Let's make sure that we have everything we need. Everything looks good. And if you come to connect, this is how we're going to connect, right? But let's just create the web first, and we're going to come back to connecting. So I'm going to pause the video and create the web, then come back. So to create the web, I'm going to come over here. I'm going to do web -ec2.tf, right? And I'm just going to copy everything from the Bastion and put it in web, right? And I'm going to change few things, right? I'm going to change the name of our resource. It's going to be name web, and the AMI, I'm going to stay the same. Let's say we're going to use the same AMI, and let's say we're going to change this, and instead of using the first one, we're going to use the second one, and the second one, since it's a list, is going to be 1. And the subnet is going to be, I think it's the web subnet. Let's see the subnet, right? Let me see the subnet. It's going to be the web subnet. It's going to be the web subnet. We're going to use the same key, and it's not going to be public, right? So over here, we either remove this one or we can put false, right? Let's remove it. We don't need this one. And let's say we want to run some command, right, on the web application. Let's say we just want to run it to have it, right? What I'm going to do is that on the security group, we need to change it as well. Put like a web security group first. Then I'm going to use user data, user underscore data, right? And I'm going to use a file, and then I'm going to name the file install that sh, right? You can name it whatever you want, right? And I'm going to create that file over here, install that sh, right? And I'm going to put some, just to have fun, okay? I'm just going to put https. That's it. https. I'm just going to install https and ask the host and put the into the index the host IP address. That's all, right? So that is how I'm gonna. This is what I'm gonna change, and I'm gonna put over here web EC2 web, right? And that's pretty much it, right? Um, that's pretty much it. Let's see. We have the AMI instance type, subnet ID, key name good. We have the security good, and we use user data, right? To use a script to install. We have our shebang, and everything else looks good. So yeah, everything looks good. I add the last line just to have access to our uh, MySQL database. So everything looks good. Let's save it and let's validate it first. And let's apply it. While it's applying, I'm going to pause the video and come back when it's done creating. So it is done creating. Let's go back and see our EC2. We have our web application that is getting initialized. We have the instance type we want. It's not public. and we use the same key, right? So I'm going to click over here, and as you guys can see, you can go on connect, and I'm going to copy this, right? Or we can copy this. The next step is to connect to my Bastion host. What I mean is that I'm going to SSH to my Bastion host so I can have access to my web application. So to SSH, I'm going to use get bash. So I'm going to cd to where I have my directory containing my Terraform configuration files. And if I do ls, you're going to see all my files right here. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to run some I'm going to run some ssh-add. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to do eval. I'm going to put ssh-agent, and I'm going to close it, right? Then I'm going to do ssh-add, and I'm going to add this key. The key is add. I can take it by doing ssh-add space -l. I'm going to see that I have my key added, right? So let me make it a little bit bigger. I'm going to clear everything. So the next thing I'm going to connect ssh-a since I add my key, right? So I'm going to go to my Bastion host first. I'm going to go to connect, and I'm going to pick up this IP address. I know that we are using CentOS 7, so the user name will be CentOS, and I paste my IP. So I'm logging to my Bastion host right now, right? Now that I'm logging to my Bastion host, I'm going to log into my EC2, right? I'm going to do SSH and put the user add, and I put this IP address. So now I'm logging to my web application, right? I can do ps -fun fux, right? And we see that everything it looks fine, right? I'm going to clear this. Then I'm going to do system ctl status httpd. That is what we install, right? And we see that everything looks good. If I do curl localhost, I do have a respawn. So that means this was installed properly, right? And the last thing is that we install MySQL, right? I can do MySQL -hyphen version, and we see we have everything. So we are able to connect, right? So we are good. The next thing we're going to do is very, very simple, right? Is to create a load balancer. So let's go ahead and create a load balancer. I'm going to put this one down, and I'm going to create a new file, right? And I'm going to call it lb lb.tf for load balancer. And I'm going to come over here, come back, and do. So it's going to be load balancer. Make sure that you look for resources, right? We have this. We're going to use the application load balancer. I'm going to copy this. Sorry, I'm going to copy this and paste it right here. So I'm going to start doing some changes, right? I'm going to name it Terraform load balancer. Is it going to be internal? No, it's not going to be internal. What type of the load balancer we're going to have is going to be the application one. And what is the security group? When we created security group, right, we had one for the load balancer and we call it LB as resource. So I'm going to close the key, and I don't think we need the web or this one anymore. So the name going to be LB only. What are the subnet, right? We can define the subnet this way, but I'm going to give the list of all my subnets. I'm going to close it, and I'm going to do like this, and I'm going to put AWS underscore subnet. That the first one was the Bastion, right? That's going to be public, comma. The second one going to be AWS underscore subnet that the load balancer itself, right? ID, comma. And the last public subnet going to be the AWS subnet underscore the NAT that ID. So this is how I'm going to create it. And I don't need this one. I'm going to comment it out. And do we need to have access log and all that? Not really. But we're gonna make sure that the load balancer is created only and only when we have web applications, because it's going to balance the load, the traffic to those web applications. Right now we have one, but we're going to create auto-scaling. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to put depend on, and since it's going to be a list, I'm just going to put one instance, right? It's going to be AWS column instance that web. That is the name of our web. Let's remove this. And what is the name of our uh, load balancer? We're going to call it Terraform -LB. And it's not going to be environment, it's going to be name. Let's call it name. So I'm going to save this, and everything looks good for me. Let's run Terraform validate to see. Everything looks good. So let's run Terraform apply. While I'm running it, if I come back over here and I go down to load balancer, you guys going to see that we don't have anything, right? And let's give it a little bit of time. I'm going to pause the video and come back when the load balancer is created. It's getting provision, right? Let's wait a little bit. It looks like our load balancer is provision, right? If I do this, you're going to see that we have our load balancer. If I click into our load balancer, we see that we don't have any listener or roles, and we also don't have target group, right? So the next thing we're going to do is to create a target group. So target group. So as you guys can see over here, we don't have any target group. So I'm going to come here, come back and do target group, a resource, and we're going to do the instance target group. I'm going to copy this, and I'm going to come over here and create a new Terraform configuration file that I'm going to call target underscore dp.tf. Oh, Let's do it again. I'm going to do target underscore tg.tf, and I'm going to paste this one. We're going to change it a little bit, right? We're going to call it AWS load balancer target group, and we're going to call this one TG for target group. And the name, I'm going to change it. I'm going to call it Terraform target group hyphen target group, right? And for the pod, we know that we have our pod, right? It's going to be our web underscore pod. We have it right here. Web pod is going to be 80. So the protocol going to be HTTPD, and VPC is not going to change. It's going to be the same VPC. And let's change this one. Let's remove this one. And I'm going to add some more variable. I'm going to say slow underscore start equals 0. You can have this, you can have it right there if you see the arguments. I'm going to use some arguments like slow start. Slow start, it says a more time for target to warm up before the load balancer send them to a full share of request. So I'm going to put 0 so we can go right there. And I'm also going to change the load balancer type. I'm going to do load underscore balancing underscore algo with underscore type. I think it's that. Yeah, pretty sure it's that. Load underscore balancing. Yes, it's going to be load balancing algorithmic type. And I'm going to use round underscore Robin. And I'm going to make sure that this target group is not created if the web server are not created. So I'm going to do AWS instances that web. We need the web instances to be running before this is able to create it, right? And we also need health check. I'm going to look over here to see if you have an example with health check. We don't, so I have to read it and put it. Okay. And had okay, I think its name says right. It's going to be health underscore check, and we're going to open curly bracket because we can put more. We're going to enable it first, and it's going to be true. Oh, so we're going to enable it, and we're going to put true. Then the next is going to be the port for the health check. Is going to be the var that web port is going to be port 80. And for the interval, you're going to do 30. And for the protocol, we're going to use HTTP. And for the path, let's see, let's use the root. And the matcher, if we have 200, we know that everything is good. So that is the matcher. And the healthy underscore, I think it's threshold. will be 9, and the unhealthy one going to be healthy, unhealthy, and the cost threshold is also going to be 9. That is our target group. We can make it complete. We can make it a little bit complicated, but that's fine for our demo. So let me check just to make sure that everything is good. I'm going to go and check the validation. Okay, we have an issue with the round robin. What is the issue? It's going to be round. Okay, I see. It's going to be underscore. Sorry. It's going to be underscore. It's going to be round robin underscore. Yes. Okay, let me check the validate. Let me see if. Okay, everything looks good. So let's go ahead and create a target group. As I said, we don't have any target group. And let's go ahead and run this. So if I refresh it, we're going to see that we have a target group. And in the target group, we should have target, but we don't have any target yet. That is why we're going to see that everything looks 0. There's nothing, right? And if we check the health check, we have the HTTP. That is what we put. It's going to be 9 unhealthy and not healthy. The success is going to be 200 and the interval is going to be 30 seconds, right? And the port going to be this port. So we are good. So the next thing we need to do is to add a target group association, right? That's what we're going to do now. So we're going to associate our web applications to our target group. So let's go ahead and then add association. It's going to be attachment, I think. Let's open this, and this one looks good. We're going to take this one, the basics one, and we're going to change it. I'm going to come over here and I'm going to do target group underscore uh, association dot tf. I'm going to call it like that, and I'm going to paste this one. Let's call it TG just to make it uniform, right? So the target group going to be this target group. We name it TG, so it's going to be TD, right? And the target ID is going to be our web application. And the port going to be the web port, right? It's going to be the same, but we decided to call it web underscore port. That is the target group attachment, right? And if you come over here, we're going to see that the web port is 80. So we have it done. So now I'm going to check the validation. It is good. So let's run it. And if I refresh it, if I go to target and I refresh it, I should see my AWS EC2 instance, right? It's going to be the web one. It's not used yet. And everything looks normal, right? You're going to see that we have one target and is unused. So everything looks good. Now, what we should do next is to create a listener. But the thing is that we want to have listener that are secure. So instead of doing listener, right now we're going to create a certificate, right? And we're going to create it through a AWS certificate manager. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to come over here. I'm going to remove all these. I'm going to do certificate manager. I'm going to look for the certificate manager. I'm going to look for this, and I'm going to copy this, and I'm going to create a new file called certificate manager at AWS certificate manager, and I'm going to paste this one, and let's call this one API, right? And the domain going to be, they said the domain would be app, I think so. So we're going to put app. We're going to put the domain over here. It's going to be what was the domain again? Let me check. So the domain going to be app.nilable.com. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to put it app.nilable.com, right? And the validation method going to be the DNS. And let's call it Terraform cert, right? And let's put name. For the life cycle, we don't really need to do that to recreate, right? To create another one before destroy. We can destroy it if we want. So we want to have control on it. So we're going to remove it. And the next thing I'm going to do is that I'm going to create a certificate validator, right? Something that's going to validate our certificate. So I'm going to come over here and you're going to see it right there. It's there, go in pair, right? I'm going to come over here and I'm going to copy. Let's say I just want to copy the first one, this one. No, this is the certificate. I'm looking for the certificate validation. I'm going to use this one, right? And I'm going to come over here. I'm going to call it the cert underscore validation .tf. You can call it whatever you want. You can even put all this in one file called main.tf if you want. But I'm going to call it, and I'm going to call it API, just to make sure that all of them are uniform, right? And my certificate are going to be the AWS underscore ACM underscore certificate. And what is the name? It's going to be named API. So I'm going to remove the example. I'm going to put API. And the route going to be all the route. And the example, the certificate, we need to create a record. Let's call the record. I'm going to do the AWS Route 53 record. Let's call it API as well. So we need it as well, right? So let's create a DNS record. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to do DNS underscore record .tf. We need it, right? And we're going to use something similar to this. Let me copy it and paste it right here. It's going to be the certificate record, right? And let's see. Let's read it. It's going to be this is going to be not an example, but API. And we say that we're going to name it API. Let's name it API validation. Let's name it API validation. just to know that this record is for the validation. I'm going to add more stuff. This is good, but I can add more stuff. I'm going to add a wire. I'm going to add allow underscore over white. I want the allow over white. I'm also going to name it. We're going to name it each that value. Okay, we're going to go through the loop. So we're going to do each. We have a loop wire for each. I'm going to name each that value that name. And for the record, where the record is, it's going to be a list just because we have multiple records. It's going to be each that value that record. And for the TTL, let's put 60. And for the type, let's put, it's going to be a list. No, it's not going to be a list. It's each that value that type. And for the zone ID, we're going to use we have to data source the zone. So we're going to do data AWS route 53 underscore is going to be zone. It's going to be, we're going to call it public zone underscore ID. Let's see what we have. If we have everything, we're going to have route public. Okay. So now we need to have this zone, right? So to have this zone, I'm going to create a new file. I'm going to call it DNS underscore zone .tf. And it's just a route 53 zone, right? And if you see over here, we can use this example. Let's use this example. And what we're going to change is that we decided over here, we call it public, right? So the zone over here going to be called public. And the name of the name going to be, our domain name is going to be anayelibo.com, right? The zone is not going to be private. We don't need it to be private. So it's not going to be private. It's going to be public. And that's pretty much everything we need. Let me check again the validation, the DNS record, the DNS zone. Now we need to connect our load balancer to the Route 53, right? Let's do that. I'm going to call it DNS to load balancer.tf, right? And to do that, it's going to be a record. So let's see if we have a record. Let's go back to wire and look for Route 53 record. We have it, but I want something very simple. I want a record. I'm going to copy this and I'm going to call it, let me call it API. and the zone gonna be the zone gonna be the zone add is gonna come from the, I have the zone over here, data. Okay, it's gonna be public. So I'm gonna do the zone add is gonna be data. This is coming from a data source, and it's gonna be AWS, and it's gonna be public. That is the name of our zone, public zone. The name of this record, we're gonna bring it from the, let's bring it from here. Now it's gonna be AWS. It's gonna come from the certificate. Let's bring it from the certificate, right? It's gonna be API-domain underscore name. That is the name. The type of record gonna be A, and we let's I think it's gonna be 60. I don't even know if we need to define it again right here. And let's don't do that. Let's change this one and use alias. We're gonna use alias, and the name of our area is gonna be AWS underscore LB. Then it's gonna be our load balancer, right? And we're gonna do DNS underscore name. So let's start it all over again. So for the alias, the name gonna be the AWS underscore LB dot LB dot DNS underscore name. And we're gonna have the zone ID. The zone ID is gonna be AWS underscore LB. I think it's gonna be LB again, and it's gonna be the zone underscore ID. And we're going to evaluate the health check. No, we are not going to do that while our load balance are going to take care of that. Evaluate target health. We're going to say false. So this is pretty much what we want. Let me review it again. We have our certificate. We have our DNS zone. We have our DNS record. We have our connection to our load balancer. We have the DNS certificate, and I'm pretty sure that's it. Let's go ahead and check it, validate, and we have an error somewhere. Overwrite is going to be okay. It's going to be, I think it's the over here. For each, right? And the DNS zone. Let me see what is going on. We open over here. We are not closing it somewhere. We need to. This is closed. For each. Okay, we need to close this one. I see. And this one is open, is closed. Okay, I think that was the only mistake I am able to see there. So let's check again. The LB zone. The AWS load balance is not declared. What is the name of our load balancer? Or we name it test. So let's change it and put LB. And we all need to get check the validation again. The record says 60 is going to be on the LB. Okay. We really need it. Let's remove it. Oh, everything looks fine. So let's go ahead and apply it and see. If we come over here and we go to certificate manager, we're gonna the list, we're gonna see that we don't have anything and we have a issue. Let me see what is going on. I think the cert validation is an issue. Let's go ahead and try again. Let's see again. Let's go ahead and apply it. Let's just make sure that the target group association is targeting the, okay, that's fine. So our load balancer is going to be LB now. That was the issue. So we have our certificate that is issued because it's got validated. If we go to RAD 53 and we go to our host zone, we should see this one created and it should be a record. So we are good. So we are good. And is the IP address should be the IP address of our load balancer. Let's check it. Oh, it's creating the load balancer. Okay, that's fine. Oh, the load balancer has an issue. Already exists. Okay, let's go ahead and apply it again. And let's see. So it's provisioning the load balancer. So I'm going to pause the video and I'm going to resume the video after the load balancer is created. So our load balancer is created. Let's just make sure that we have the proper target group. We don't have anything, right? We don't have any listener or role. Make sure that we have our target group and we also have one target, right? And everything looks good. So the next thing we're going to do is that we're going to add what we call a listener, right? So it's going to listen for traffic and redirect it the way we want, right? So we're going to go to AWS, Terraform AWS. We're going to look for listener, right? And we're going to have a listener right here. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to create a new file that I'm going to call listener.tf. We're going to put all the listener right there. So I'm just going to copy, and we don't need this. We only need this. It's going to be forwarding. We're going to forward because we're going to use security, right? So we're going to come over here and we're going to do this. It's going to be called listener and we're going to call it http_ed1. just like that. We call it whatever we want, right? And the load balancer gonna be AWS underscore LB, and we call it load balancer. And the port gonna be 443, and the security gonna be SSL policy gonna be this one, but the certificate is not gonna be this, right? We're not gonna use this one as a certificate. What we're gonna use is a AWS underscore ACM underscore certificate. Let's take it from here. It's gonna be this one. And we're gonna call it certificate that API that ARM, because we are looking for the ARM. And this is HTTPS. We need to add the default action that is going to be forward, right? And it's going to be forward to what group? And we have like a target group, right? We have the target group over here. So it's going to be, I'm going to take this one. This is how I know what I'm doing. And I'm going to paste it right here. So it's going to forward to this target group. It's going to forward it to this target group. And the next thing is that you don't have to do that, but since we are using a certificate, right, this certificate, we need to make sure that the certificate is created before this listener is created, right? So we're going to do depends on, we're going to put the list, and I'm going to put the validator, right? We need to, let's put the validator. Let's put the validator this time. We need to make sure that the validator is there, right? And that everything looks good. Let's see, it's going to be, the action will not be forward, right? Let's see. We use HTTPS. So the action going to be forward, yes, because we want it to be secure. And we're going to use a certificate. We're going to use the SSL underscore policy, and we put the policy by default. We're going to use the default one. And we have the certificate. We have the action, right? It's going to be forward. And let's save it and let's check it. Everything looks good. If we come over here and go to load balancer, we're going to see that we don't have any listener. And let's apply it. Let's apply it and see how the listener going to behave. And if I refresh it, we have a listener and we have the target group. Let's just make sure that the target group is the proper one. And yes, is our target group, right? So we have our target group. When you receive traffic, forward it to this target group. That's pretty much what we are saying. And now, this is only for HTTPS. But if we receive a request coming from HTTP, we should be able to redirect it to HTTPS. So I'm going to copy this and I'm going to create another listener. The job of the other listener will be only to redirect the traffic. So it's going to be, we're going to call it 2, and this is going to be the same thing, and the port going to be 80. and the protocol going to be HTTPS, right? So when we do this, we don't need to add these two. We don't need them. And the action is no more forwarding, is redirect. And when we redirect, right, where are we redirecting? So I'm going to remove this target, and I'm going to put redirect right here. Where are we redirecting? And I'm going to put port. We're going to redirect it to this port, 443. Right? And the protocol of the port of that port is HTTPS, right? Sorry. And we need to put one more thing. It's going to be the static code, right? If I think well, let me see. Yeah, the static code, when we redirecting, we're going to have the static code. Status underscore code is going to be equal. Let me just copy this and paste it. Right? So this is what we should have. And I think that is all we need for the redirect. Let me check let me validate it. And let me apply it. And we have it right there. It's going to be redirect every time we have. And we have the certificate for this. We don't have the MTLS. It's not, we don't need it and no tag. That's fine. So we are good with the load balancer and everything. So I can go to my terminal and access my application because I installed HTTPS on my web server. So I should be able to access it. I just open a terminal, right? I'm going to come over here and I'm going to do app, and it's going to come that nil ebo.com, right? And I should be able to see this one. It says, welcome to my web server. My IP address is going to give you a private IP address. Don't mind this one, okay? Mind this one. This is the private IP address of our web application. So that means that we are able to access our web application. So now, one of the requirements is that we need to have a scalable application. So we need to add auto scaling. And to add auto scaling, we need to do 3 steps. The first step is to create a launch template, right? Then we need to create an auto scaling group, and we need to create an auto scaling policy. Let's start with the launch template. We're going to come over here. I'm going to do AWS launch template. I'm going to have this example, and I'm going to come over here. I'm going to create a new file called launch underscore template .ts. I'm going to paste this one, and I'm going to do some changes, right? Let's call it my underscore app underscore AG1, right? And the name going to be my launch template. The AMI, I have my AMI that I want to use. Let's remove this. I'm going to build it. We have a AMI ID. Let's remove this. We need the AMI ID. We need the instance type. So we don't need this one. We need the instance type. We need the kernel. We need the key name. We don't need the kernel ID. Let's make it simple. We don't need some monitoring, right? No, we need a placement. We don't need this one. Let's use a placement. Let's use a placement because we're going to need to make sure that it is in the same availability zone as where the load balancer can balance. And let's remove this. The VPC group ID, we're going to need it. And the text tag specifications, we may need it. And the user data, yeah, we're going to need it. But this time, last time we use a file, right? Over here, we use a file. But this time I'm going to show you how to do it using base 64. So I'm going to come back over here and I'm going to do some changes, right? The AMI ID, I have my AMI ID that I want to use, and that is the one I'm going to copy right here. We're going to use this, and the instance type, we're going to use the instance type, the second one, right? Because it's the web, so we need something that is robust. And if you come over here, it's going to be pretty much the same thing. Let's copy it and paste it right here. As our web application, the key name going to be the same thing. And the placement going to be the same thing, right? The what is that? It's going to be it was var that I think it was easy one. Let me check it. Let's go to subnet. Where is subnet? The web, yes, easy one. That's good. And the security group is going to be the same as the EC2, the web application. So it's going to be the same security group. And we don't have to put this if you don't want to put data. You can just remove this and remove the code. It is the same thing. This and these are the same. It's just depend on your preference, right? And the target, we're going to, let's call it auto scaling instance. And for the user data, I say I'm going to use another way, right? I'm going to use this. And what I'm going to do is that I'm going to take everything we did here. I'm going to come over here. I'm going to do base 64 encode. And I'm going to paste it here. And I'm going to encode it. And I'm going to and I'm going to copy. Oh, I'm going to copy all these. I'm going to come to my template and I'm going to paste it. Oh, it's pasting the same thing. So I'm going to do it again. Let's copy the clipboard maybe. Okay. So we have the end and let's see the beginning. We have, okay, it looks good. So let me put it right here. Right here is fine. And let me close it. It's going to be EOF. So I think that is everything I need for this. Is very simple, right? It's not complicated. Let's see. Okay, let's save it and let's validate it first. Let's apply it. And if you see over here on launch template, we have nothing from now, right? And let's see what's going to happen. Now we have one launch template and we call it my launch template, this one. And the version is, the latest version is 1. We just created it, right? So the next thing we need to do is to create a auto-scaling group. So I'm going to come over here, go back and do auto-scaling group. And for the auto-scaling group, we're going to use classmate group. No, we don't need it. Auto-scaling group. Let's copy this. Let's copy this. Let's write it. It's going to be too long. I'm going to come over here and I'm going to do auto scaling underscore group dot tf, right? So I'm going to take this one. Let's copy this and paste it right here. We're going to call it my underscore app underscore eg1. Let's call it like that. And we're going to start with the name. I'm going to call it my auto scaling group. And what is the minimum we want? The minimum size. The minimum we want is 1, and the max size is 3. We don't want to have more than 3. And what is the health check? I think it's that. Health check type. What is the health check underscore type? We're going to use EC2. And what is the next? We're going to have a target group AMI. Let's do the zone, the VPC zone identifier. VPC zone underscore identifier. It's gonna be a list. I'm gonna do the AWS subnet that is going to be the same subnet as our web application. And let's do after that, we're going to do the target group AMI. Let's add a target group because we have a group, right? Target group and it's going to be target group and it's going to be a list in case we have multiple ones. And we're going to do AWS underscore LB underscore target underscore group. Then our target group was what is our target group? TG. So our target group is going to be TG. So we're going to take the ARN, sorry. And besides this, we have we can have mixed instance policy. This is mixed instance policy. Let me just copy this and we want to override, right? Let me copy this. Let me copy up to here and do this. Mix instance policy, launch template specification, the launch template ID. This is where we put our AWS launch template, right? And the launch template was this. I'm going to copy this. I'm going to come over here. I'm going to paste this one. Let's remove this. And it's going to be that ID. So this is the launch template we're going to use, and we can use override over. You don't have to use override, but I want to use override to show you that you can override the instance type, right? Let's override the instance type. Maybe when we want to say that when our EC2 instance, for example, our EC2 instance, the instance type is 01, right? If you go to over here, it's going to be T2 that this one, right? But if we want something not very powerful like this, but powerful, we can do that right here. This is where we're going to put it. I'm going to come over here. I'm going to override the instance type I want when the launch template is launched, right? I want, let's say, T3 micro, for example. You can override whatever you want. So I open 2 times. I have to close 2 times. Then I have to close this one, the yellow one. It's simple. We don't need to complicate it, right? So this is the launch template. So the next thing is that we need to know when to launch our a new server, right? A new EC2. So we're gonna be auto-scaling policy. It's gonna be policy, not group anymore. And we have it right here. Let's copy this one as an example. And I'm going to create a new file. I'm going to call it auto scaling policy.ts. I'm going to paste it right here, and I'm going to call this one, let's call it same name, might underscore app underscore eg1. I like to call all the resources coming from the same block. I have to give them the same name, and the name going to be my. So now we're going to start adding auto scaling policy, as you guys can see. And next, so now I'm gonna predefine right how the instance is gonna be created, right? So I'm gonna put the target underscore tracking underscore configuration, right? And I want the average CPU. So I'm just gonna copy it and paste it, right? And I'm gonna add the the target value, right? I'm going to say just for this video that when the CPU reached 5%, a new instance should be created. And that's what I'm doing right now. So basically what I did, my mic went off, so uh, there are some mute, but basically what I did is that I set up the auto-scaling policy, right? And I added target group and estimate instance 1 up to 300. And I add the predefined metric type, right? It's going to be the average CPU utilization. And I put 5%, like when the CPU reach 5% of utilization, we're going to have a new instance created, right? That is what I did. I do have some bugs that I'm fixing, and as you can see, it's just some typos. I'm gonna fix them, then we're gonna launch our auto scaling and launch template. Now, let's go and look the auto scaling group. We see that we have an activity, and as you can see, we have a new EC2 instance being created because we put 5% CPU, and that is automatic policy. And we can come to the detail, and we're going to see the policy group there. We're going to see the launch template, and this is where we put the auto-scaling policy. So let's go back to the EC2 instances, and you're going to see that we have a new EC2 instance being launched, right? And you guys see that it's T3 underscore micro as we as we did the overwriting, right, into the at the instance type, right? And if I refresh now, you're going to see that we on the private IP addresses we have different IP address, right? Especially the last one, you see it's changing, right? It's going to be 197, and if you refresh, it's going to be 149. And as you can see, we have everything there, and everything is private IP addresses. And if you go over there, you're going to see that the private IP address we will see on the browser is right there, 4.149. And you guys can see this is right there, 4.149. And that's how we do auto scaling. So now that we have our auto scaling set up, we're almost there. One of the last thing we need to do is to configure our database replica, and the backup. So we're going to start with the database. The first thing we are doing is very simple, is to create our database. And as you guys can see, we're going to start by creating the master database. So I'm going to go to the browser, and I'm going to put, you can put DB instance, or you can put RDS MYSQL, and you're going to look for a DB. You're going to look for AWS DB instance, and let's copy it. Let's copy the first one, and first let's create a file called database-master.tf, and let's copy this and paste it there. We're gonna make some changes, right? And let's start making some changes, right? Let's call this one let's call it the RDS primary instance. The allocation storage gonna stay 10. Let's change the name, right? And let's to remove the name, DB after name, and put the identifier prefix. Let's put the prefix there. And it's going to be MyDB-master as value. One of the things that we're going to remove the engine version, right? We don't need it. AWS is going to take off it. And also we don't need the group parameter, right? We're going to do the instance class. We, instead of using macro, we're going to use medium. Let's use medium. For the username, let's call username user. Let's make it simple. And for the password, let's make it simple. Password. For the parameter group name, we don't really need it. And we're going to skip the final snapshot. Yes, we're going to skip it. We're going to make it true. Let's add more argument. This is basic, but we can make it a little bit complicated, right? Less complicated, but yeah, let's add some. Let's add the storage type. We're going to use DB2 storage type. Let's also associate our security group. We created a security group for our database. Let's associate it to our database. It's going to be VPC underscore security underscore group underscore RDS. So it's going to be a list. Let's add a DB subnet group, right? We're going to create a group of subnet where we can have our database. We need at least two, right? So we're going to create it wire. But we don't have that group, so we need to create the group itself, right? But let's name the group DB underscore subnet underscore group. Well, we need to create that group. We need to have the name, right? It's the name, not AM. It's the name. Okay. Okay, good. This time. Okay. So now we need to go and create a new file where we need to create that group, right? Or we may not need a new file. We may just go to the subnet. Let's go to the subnet. Let's clear all these. And let's do some search for subnet group. And let's add it on the subnet. Now let's name it. And for the subnet IDs, we have two, right? We have the DB and the DB2. So that is done. So let's add some backup, right, retentions. So it's going to be 7 days. And let's add also the backup window, right? And let's also add the maintenance window. So one of the things we want also is to have the performance insight enabled, right? So let's go ahead and add it. We also want to have multi availability zones. Let's go ahead and add it as well. We want to encrypt our data, right? So we want our storage to be encrypted, right? So we're going to add the encryption, and also we're going to add the encryption key, right? So we're going to add the KMS key, and we're going to call it my KMS key. Let's go ahead and add the the encryption, the key, sorry, KMS key. I'm going to go to the browser to add it. But let's call it over here. It's going to be KMS-key-ID, and I'm going to call it, I say my KMS key. Okay, and it's going to be the ARN. Oops. ARN. Oh. Let me try again. ARN space. Okay, this time is good. So let me go ahead and add the tags before going and creating the key itself, the KMS key. I like to name it. I'm going to name it master DB. Sorry, uppercase B. And I think that's all I want to add for that. Let me go ahead and add the KMS key. I'm going to create a new file. I'm going to call it kms.tf, and I'm going to go to the browser. I'm going to see the resource. I'm just going to copy it and paste it. Let me change the name of the resource. I said I'm going to name it KMS. Let me see it. I'm just going to copy it right here and paste it right there. And the description, I'm going to change it a little bit. I'm going to say KMS key for RDS. The retention, I'm going to put 8. I think the minimum is 7, but I'm going to put 8. Sorry. Then I'm going to make sure that I have multi-region. Then I'm going to add some tags. I like my key to have tags. You can also add alias if you want, but that's not necessary. So let's validate it. Everything looks good, and let's deploy it. So you're going to do Terraform apply, and we're going to go to, let's go to the key management service first. Those are due to deletion, and we don't have a new key yet, right? So let's go to RDS, and it is creating, right? Let's give it a little bit of time to create. Yeah. So my database is created and it is available, right? Let's go ahead and see some key features, right? We want to make sure that we have a snapshot that we have it is good. Let's go ahead and we have a database itself, right? And let's see if we have the performance insight. Yeah, we have it, right? And let's go back and see if we have some automate backup. We have it. So what we did is that over here, this is where we set up the backups. All these are just for backups. This is for performance insight. And these two are for encryption. And don't forget to create this key, KMS key, wire, right? So right now, everything looks fine, but we're still missing two things. The first thing is that we don't have a replica. And the second thing is that we don't have a backup in another region, right? Let's go ahead and create the replica. And to create the replica, I'm just going to create a new file and I'm going to call it db underscore replica.tf, right? And I'm just going to copy the everything we did right here, and I'm going to paste it right here. And I'm going to change the name. I'm going to put replica. And the storage is a replica, so we don't really need to add this. And the identifier, we don't need it, right? We're going to use the replica underscore source underscore db, and it's going to be the name of our database, the master. That, and it's going to be that identifier. The engine, we don't really need it. No, we don't need the engine. It's a replica. The instance class, we're going to keep it. The username and the password, we don't need it because it's the replica of the master. Do we keep a snapshot? Skip the yes, we're going to skip it. What about the storage? We don't really need it. What about the security group IDs? Yes, we need it, right? What about the subnet group? Um, I don't think we need it. Let's remove it. What about the backup retention? Yeah, we can leave it. We can leave the backup windows. We can leave the maintenance, and we can leave the performance insight. We can use easy and storage class, and this is going to be the replica. For me, everything looks good. We can use the same key since we are in the same region. Uh, let's use the same key. Everything looks good for me. So now I'm just going to go ahead and validate it. Replica source DB, or it should be replicate. Sorry. Let's check it again. Okay, everything looks good. Let's apply it. While it is applying, I want to show you guys something, right? I can go over here and I'm going to pick up this. I'm going to open my Visual Studio, right? I'm logging to my web server, and I'm gonna go ahead and SSH to my SQL, right? MySQL -h for the host. I'm gonna paste this one. What I copy this, the endpoint. I'm gonna do uppercase P is gonna be 3306, and I'm gonna do -u for user. I say it's gonna be user, and small hyphen P, sorry. And I'm going to put password as my password. As you guys can see, I'm able to connect to the master database. So let's go ahead and wait for the replica to be created. And if I come here, I'm going to see that the replica is getting created. This is the replica. And let's give it a time to be created. And I'm going to pause the video and come back when it's created. While we are waiting, I can see the key over here. I'm going to see that we have a new key, but we don't have an alias, right? Let's go ahead and add the alias to our key, right? I'm going to come over here and I'm going to add the alias, right? It's going to be resource. I don't recall it. Let's come over here and let's go to KMS alias. I'm just going to copy this and paste it while I'm going to say adding alias, and I'm going to paste this one, right? So I'm going to call it, let's remove this one. We already have the key. Let's go to the alias, right? And it's going to be alias, and let's call it master db key, right? And let's call our key, this is our key. Let's remove a and put our key and save it. So we're going to alias this, right? So that when we come over here, we can see a name, an alias, right? Let's pause the video while the replica is being created, and we're going to resume when it's done creating. So finally, everything is fine. We're going to go to the database, and as you guys can see, we have the master database and we have the replica right here, but both are in the same availability zone. That's fine, but what we want is that we want to make sure that we have at least one backup in another region. And to do that, we need to add another provider for that region, right? Let's say that the US2 is the root provider, right? Let's go ahead and add that other provider. I'm going to go to providers. Where's my provider? Right there. And I'm going to add a new provider, right? I'm going to add, let's use US West 2. So it's going to be US West, right? This is the new provider we're going to use. And let's give this provider an alias, because we have the root and we may have some conflict, right? So we need to give some providers aliases, right? And let's give this one this alias. Since it's a replica, let's call it alias, and let's call this one the replica, right? Let's save it. Then the next thing we're gonna do is that we're gonna create another K, K, KMS key for that region. And this is how I'm gonna do it, right? I'm gonna do it for the region. Let's call it my KMS West, right? And it's gonna be in West region. The number of retention, let's put 8, the tag going to be -west. Now we want to make sure that this is created at US East 2, right? Any availability zone over there, we want to make sure that it is created at US East 2, right? How do we do that? We're going to add provider, right? The provider this provider that we just added, we're going to add it right here, and we're going to do provider equal AWS replica. We put the alias, right? AWS is going to be AWS and the alias replica. So we're going to save this one, right? And we, as I said, we can add the alias if you want, but I'm just going to show you how to add the alias for this, but you don't have to do that for the replica, the database backup, right? At the US East 2, right? So now that we did it, we already created a alias or a provider alias. We created a new key for the region. Now we need to create the backup, right? Let's create a new file. Let's do that in the new file. db underscore backup underscore west.tf, right? So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to look for AWS instance automate. I'm going to look for instance automate backup, right? It's going to be backup replication. Let's come over here and let's copy this one. Oh, we have this is the basic one, and we want to look the one with KMS, right? So we're going to copy this and we're going to paste it right here, right? Let's remove this one and let's put the master database. We can have it from the replication. If we go to replica, we can have it right here. We're going to paste it and we are looking for the ARN, right? And for the key, we are not going to use this key, right? We're going to use this one. We just created a new key and we're going to use this key. Let's paste it and let's fix it, right? And for it's going to be the add is going to be the ARN as well. And we can add a retention period, right? Let's add the retention period. Let's retain it for 7 days. So that is how we do it. So to make sure that we have a backup in another region, the first thing is that we need to add a new provider to that region, created a key in that region, and make sure that we create the backup over there, right? Using this as script, right? And one thing I added is that I was saying it earlier, right? Is that in USS2, our key doesn't have an alias, so we decided to add it. This alias. We can add an alias for this one, but it's not a big deal. So let's go ahead and check everything. Everything looks good. And let's go ahead and apply it. While we are applying it, I just want to make sure that you guys understand that we have a replica right here, right? I'm going to click into the replica, and I can also copy the endpoint of the replica and go to my git bash. Let's exit and change the endpoint just to make sure that I'm able to connect to my replica, right? It's going to be the same user and the same password anyway. So I'm able to access. You guys can see over here. Over here is the replica. And if I come back, you're going to see that the replica is 01. And you're going to see the connection ID is 20. And over here, this one 02, it was the master. So we are able to log into the replica and the master, right? And let's see. Oh, we have an error, right? We have an error. It says replica diff automate backup. So we have an issue right here. And what is the issue again? And what is the issue again? It's going to be the RDS instance of AM, and this is going to be the key. And what is the issue? But we decided to use in another region, right? Oh, okay, I see. My bad. I need to add the region. I'm going to add the provider the same way I did. It's going to be AWS replica. Sorry. Let's go ahead and apply it. And you guys can see now we have a alias, right? The one we add via this alias. It's going to be master-db-key. You can do it. It's just nice to know which key you are using, but we don't have to add the alias, right? And for this one, we don't really need the alias. If I go to US West or Oregon, right, I'm going to see that I have a key that is created, but no aliases. Don't mind the other keys. Those are there due for deletion. After the number of days, it's going to be deleted, right? So we have our key created, right? Let's go to our region and go to the RDS to see if we have a backup there. We have one snapshot, right? Let's go to automate backup, replicate, and we have a replicate backup, right? And it is encrypted, right? And it is coming from the master database, right? The master database is what? MyDB-master is right there. So we have it there. So we have our backup where we want our backup into another region, right? Let's come back over here and I want to show you guys something, right? because when we created the master database, we add this one, and this enabled us to see the performance inside, right? This is for the master. You can see it over here. We don't have anything yet, but you can see it over here, and you can change the last 5 minutes, for example. You're going to see, and you can do the this is for the replica, right? And another thing I wanted to point out is that you're going to see two recommendations right here. The first one is that we didn't have monitoring, right? We don't have a monitoring for our database. I didn't want to go over it. The video gonna be very, very long, so I didn't want to do it. And yes, and as I said, we're gonna have some snapshot, especially from system, right? We don't have any manual. We didn't take any manual, right? It's gonna be from the system. And yeah, so this is how I did the project, right? And now we had everything we want and everything that is requested, and we went beyond all the requirements. So we have our database running properly, secure, encrypted, and we have our replica secure, encrypted with backup, and it is a multi AZ. And also, we also have our database backup replica, right, in another region, especially is in the US East too. So that is how I tackled this project. That is how I tackled this project, and I did everything as required, right? It may take few days to do that, but this is how we do that. And if you found another way of doing that, please ping me, right? But this is how I'm going to do it, and this is how I feel like my infrastructure is robust and safe. Okay, so we're still going to wait for the replication to be done. I'm going to pause the video and come back when it's done. So this is how it is done, and this is how I did the project. And this is the, don't forget though, after creating all this project using Terraform, don't forget to run Terraform space destroy space auto approve, right? And this Terraform was created into the default workspace, but you can use workspaces to create this project in different environment, right? And we're gonna change a little bit the way we define stuff when we do that. But if you like this video, and please, if you feel that this video gave you something or more value, please give us a thumbs up, and please subscribe to my channel. See you next time, and please send me a message telling me what you want me to do next. Ciao.